has been expected for generations by many religions. Christians await him as the Christ, Jews as the Messiah, Muslims as the Messiah or as the Imam Mahdi. Hindus look for Krishna and Buddhists the fifth Buddha. Our guest, Benjamin Creme, has one of the most provocative messages of our time, that all the religions, without knowing it, are awaiting the return of the same individual, even though they call him by different names. And what's more, that this individual is already among us. Already among us, Benjamin, I'm sure comes as news to most people who are hearing this. Are there, in fact, those in the world for whom this is not news, who have, in fact, seen him?
Oh, indeed. There are thousands of such people all over the world. One particularly well-media documented event was in Nairobi, in Kenya, in June '88, when he suddenly appeared out of thin air, I mean literally out of thin air, at a prayer meeting attended by 6,000 people, who instantaneously recognized him as the Christ. And about 30, 40 people around him, close to him, were entirely healed. They walked off, threw away their crutches.
But overall, it would be fair to say that he's kept a somewhat low profile in appearing.
Yes. He works within the law governing our free will. And most people who give any kind of thought at all to the idea of a Christ returning to the world visualize him coming down on a cloud, you know, from heaven, tremendous dramatic event, waving a rod of power, surrounded by angels blowing trumpets and so on. In fact, he said, "Sleep not, keep awake, keep alert, for I come like a thief in the night. In such an hour I should think not." And that's exactly what he has done.
You're talking about the second coming. Question might be, are you a missionary, a theologian? What are you, and where is this all stemming from?
None of these things. I'm not an evangelist, a missionary. I may be a man with a mission, but not a missionary. You know, there is a difference. I am a painter, an artist, who was contacted way back in 1959 by one of the close disciples of the Christ. The Christ is really not the name of an individual. It's the name of a great master, a great, powerfully, highly evolved man. In fact, the master of all the masters. And the masters are men like us who have really preceded us in evolution and finished this evolutionary path on which we are all set. I was contacted by one of these masters who lives in the Himalayas early in '59. He sent another disciple to tell me that I was being contacted, and then he contacted me himself. And soon after that, he said, "Now our master, the master of all the masters, has something important to tell you." And then the voice of his master, the Lord Maitreya, to give him his personal name, who is the master who embodies what we call the Christ principle.
Lord Maitreya is not a name which most Christians would associate with the Christ. What is his relationship to the Christ?
Maitreya and the Christ are one and the same individual, and he worked through Jesus by overshadowing Jesus 2,000 years ago in Palestine. His consciousness entered into that of Jesus at the baptism, and from the baptism to the crucifixion, Jesus was the Christ. This time, the Christ himself, the Lord Maitreya himself, has come into the world.
Benjamin, why has he returned now? Is there any particular relationship to the year 2000, or what's known as the millennium?
Yes, it's a cosmic date that determines his coming. See, our sun is traveling around the heavens in relation to the constellations. There are 12 constellations which make up what we call the zodiac. And approximately every 2,150 years, our sun comes into an alignment with each of these constellations in turn. The energies given to us, radiated to us by the particular constellation with which our sun is in alignment, create the conditions of our various civilizations, to give it a particular quality. We were in the age of Pisces. This is now coming to an end. It was inaugurated by Jesus as the Christ 2,000 years ago. Maitreya has returned to take up the work which will be really the work of the cycle of Aquarius.
You certainly, I would guess, are not the only person, the first and only person to have gotten this information. Are there some antecedents to it?
I'm a student of esotericism, and that tradition posits the whole history of the race and the reappearance not only of the Christ, but of a succession of avatars down through the ages. There has never been an age, a cosmic cycle, without such a teacher coming before humanity teaching, giving us the steps which will lead us on to a further expression of our potential, which is our potential divinity.
So is this really the message of all these teachers, is to be sort of a coach for humanity in a sense? Is that their purpose for being here?
Indeed.
Not to erect religions, or is it?
Well, religions have most times been erected around them, but they themselves never claimed to be divine. But most teachers have been made into, even the Buddha, who didn't even postulate a god. He is made into a god, worshipped by Buddhists and so on. The Christ is made into a god by his followers, and Muhammad, if not exactly a god, is nevertheless worshipped as if he were a god.
And didn't Jesus say not to create idols?
Indeed. All of these teachers have been idolized. They have all been put up into heaven or nirvana or someplace well out of the way, so that humanity could get on with its everyday corruption. That's what it's all about. If there is nobody actually, living among you as a living presence and a living teaching, then of course you can be as corrupt as you like. That's what humanity does.
Let's go back to your story. We have this antecedent of the esoteric teachings, and you were contacted about this emergence. Did you expect it?
No, not at all.
You didn't expect it?
Not at all. I knew about the masters, but I wasn't expecting any kind of contact. But
this communication that you had first from the master and then from Lord Maitreya, how did it come to you?
It's telepathic.
You hear a voice inside, only it doesn't go through the
Well,
air
in the
itself.
beginning it was a loud voice. He has listened and listened, that voice, until it's a thin kind of murmur. But it
still gets the point across.
Yeah, sure.
You got the message first from a master and then from Maitreya himself. And what did he say?
He said, I myself am coming, and far sooner than anyone thinks possible. It will be in about 20 years. In the event, it was 18 years. And he said, and you will have a role to play in my coming if you accept it. And then the master said, well, you've heard something today which has changed your view of things. The time is coming when you will be expected to act upon this and affirm his coming. He said that on 2 occasions, and then he dropped the whole subject for years and years and years, and I gradually forgot about it. Until 1972, when the master began to train me and prepare me in very precise and scientific ways for the work which I've been doing ever since, which is really preparing the way somewhat for the Christ, creating the climate of hope, of expectancy for his coming, so that he can enter our lives without infringing our free will. That's what it's all about.
Because of the fact that Maitreya, the Christ, does not fit the exact mold of the traditional picture of the Christ, that some people would be a little bit skeptical and may even wonder if this is the Antichrist that you're talking about.
Oh, indeed. It's a completely mistaken idea of what the Antichrist is. The Antichrist is not a man, it's an energy. It's a force. It's deliberately released to break down the old order. It was released in Roman times through the Emperor Nero to break down the Roman dispensation to prepare the way for Christendom. It was released again in our time through Hitler, with a group around him in Nazi Germany, together with a group of militarists in Japan and another group in Italy. And these 3 powers, the Axis powers, in the war with the Allies from 39 to 45, embodied the energy we call the Antichrist. It has been, it's gone, it's done its destructive work. It is behind us and has prepared the way for the coming of the Christ.